Okay, dude. Carl Sagan, Fourth Dimension. I love Carl Sagan. Let's give it a watch. I've seen this before, but it still blows my mind.
Discussing the large-scale structure of the cosmos, astronomers sometimes say that space is curved, or that the universe is finite but unbounded. Whatever are they talking about? Let's imagine that we are perfectly flat. I mean, absolutely flat. And that we live, appropriately enough, in a flatland.
I love Carl Sagan's voice. I could listen to this for 10,000 years. I'm sure after year one I'd start to get annoyed, but I could still listen to it for 10,000 years, mostly because I'd still have ears.
A land designed and named by Edwin Abbott, a Shakespearean scholar who lived in Victorian England. Everybody in Flatland is, of course, exceptionally flat. We have squares, circles, triangles, and we all scurry about, and we can go into our houses and do our flat business. Now, we have width and length, but no height at all. Now, these little cutouts have some little height, but let's ignore that. Let's imagine that these are absolutely flat. That being the case, we know, us Flatlanders, about left-right, and we know about forward-back, but we have never heard of up-down. Let us imagine that into Flatland, hovering above it, comes a strange three-dimensional creature which, oddly enough, looks like an apple. And the three-dimensional creature sees an attraction.
Do you know what blows my mind? What blows my mind is that if there are fourth dimensional beings, they would look at us the same way we as three-dimensional beings would look at two-dimensional beings. And that's crazy. Absolutely crazy. I'm about to out myself. Who is Carl Sagan? Carl Sagan, let me read the wiki, because you know what? All I know of Carl Sagan is that he hosted a show and he's incredibly smart. Carl Edward Sagan was an American astronomer, planetary scientist, cosmologist, astrophysicist, astrobiologist, author, and science communicator. That is crazy. Dude did a lot. Pretty much, this is to anyone who likes Carl Sagan, this is probably going to sound like the biggest insult in the universe, but pretty much, he was the Neil deGrasse Tyson for, 1950 to 1980 or 1990. That's the best way I can describe him. He did some TV shows and lots of talks and stuff, but dude was smart. Like, as far as I can tell, was smarter than Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Attractive, congenial looking.
And not nearly as cocky.
Where watches it.
Would fourth dimensional beings be an environment? So, for example, the sky? No. Fourth dimensional beings would be people that could travel using the fourth dimension. Meaning you could, I think, essentially go anywhere you want at any time you want because you're able to fold space-time. As far as I understand it.
Its house and decides in a gesture of interdimensional amity to say hello. Hello, says the three-dimensional creature. How are you? I am a visitor from the third dimension. Well, the poor square looks around his closed house, sees no one there, and what's more, has witnessed a greeting coming from his insides, a voice from within. He surely...
Because the three-dimensional being, which is above him, he can't see above him because he's two-dimensional, so it feels like the voice is coming from within him. Oh my god. Do you think that maybe there's a possibility that maybe, possibly, that people that hear voices in their heads are actually just hearing fourth-dimensional beings that are the equivalent of being above them? The same way the two-dimensional square hears the three-dimensional apple from inside because the apple's above? Yo! It's entirely possible. DeGrasse Tyson seems like more than a bit of a dick compared to Sagan. Yeah, true. Unlikely? Listen, Ryan, we're not talking about how likely it is. We're talking about whether or not it's possible. And even a 0.00001% possibility means that it's possible.
He is getting a little worried about his sanity. The three-dimensional
Getting a little worried about his sanity, dude! Oh, what if the 2D being had eyes on top? Well, that wouldn't make sense because the 2D being can only see its plane of existence. If it could see above it, it wouldn't be able to see its plane of existence, which would mean that technically it wouldn't have eyes because technically it would be blind to its own dimension.
The three-dimensional creature is unhappy about being considered a psychological aberration, and so he descends to actually enter Flatland. Now, a three-dimensional creature exists in Flatland only partially. Only a plane, a cross-section through him can be seen. So when the three-dimensional creature first reaches Flatland, it's only the points of contact which can be seen, and we'll represent that by stamping the apple in this ink pad and placing that image in Flatland. And
what if that's what ghosts are? What if the voices that people hear in their heads are fourth dimensional beings? And what if ghosts are fourth dimensional beings? Because in the same way that the 2D object can only see, the 2D square can only see that part of the apple, what if ghosts are all that we can see of the fourth dimension? I love Carl Sagan so much. If it was at all possible, it would call into question all of the medication brain scans actions of people who hear voices. Yeah, it would. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that any of this is actually, yeah, this is what's happening. I'm just sitting here going, oh my God, imagine if. But would explain to me why people say I've spoken to God. Those are the people I'm thinking of, not the people that have actual, physically you can see their brain scans. I'm talking about the people that are like, no, I've spoken to God, I heard him, I heard the Lord speaking through me, I'm talking about them. Like, do you think maybe possibly you just happened to have maybe been, the square in Flatland?
And as the apple were to descend through, slither by Flatland, we would progressively see higher and higher slices, which we can represent by cutting the apple. So the square, as time goes on, sees a set of objects mysteriously appear from nowhere and inside a closed room and change their shape dramatically.
Ghosts appear from nowhere.
His only conclusion could be that he's gone bonkers. Well, the apple might be a little annoyed at this conclusion, and so, not such a friendly gesture from dimension to dimension, makes a contact with the square from below and sends our flat creature fluttering and spinning above Flatland. At first, the square has no idea what's happening. He's terribly confused. This is utterly outside his experience. But after a while, he comes to realize that he is seeing inside closed rooms in Flatland. He is looking inside his fellow flat creatures. He is seeing Flatland from a perspective no one has ever seen it before, to his knowledge.
The way that he put this all together to explain it is so unbelievably genius that anyone can get it. Crop circles, dude. Crop circles are fourth dimensional beings just passing through.
Getting into another dimension provides as an incidental benefit a kind of X-ray vision. Now our flat creature slowly descends to the surface, and his friends rush up to see him. From there.
So one of the cool things about him explaining this is you can tie a lot of you can explain a lot of things by looking at this. Like, for example, how the apple brushes the square, it floats into the air and then floats its way down and suddenly appears here. That's roughly how teleportation would seem to work if we as three-dimensional beings figured out how to teleport matter without breaking it apart. and instead by folding space in on itself in order to pass from one area to the other simultaneously. It would seem like it would almost, I think, be the equivalent of just lifting up out of your dimension and then you float down here. Now, I'm not saying if you teleported it would be like floating down. I'm saying it's the same kind of concept. You exit your two-dimensional realm into the third dimension, and you come back down into the second. In the same way that in the third dimension, we could teleport, and it would be entering into the fourth dimension and coming out in the third dimension. Yes.
From their point of view, he has mysteriously appeared from nowhere. He hasn't walked from somewhere else. He's come from some other place. They say, for heaven's sake, what's happened to you? And the poor square has to say, well, I was in some other mystic dimension called up. And they will pat him on his side and comfort him, or else they'll ask, well, show us, where is that third dimension? Point to it. And the poor square will be unable to comply. But maybe more interesting is the other direction in dimensionality. What about the fourth dimension?
I'm gonna need you to grab onto your butt cheeks because this shit is gonna blow you away. This is where your head's gonna hurt a little bit. I'm just warning you. The explanation of the fourth dimension both makes sense and is so unbelievably confusing that it's very difficult to process the information. Hey Patch, how's it going, man? Are we thinking heaven might be the fourth dimension? Well, you know, one thing that I think is funny on the subject of like heaven and the fourth dimension, etc., is that I have heard heaven described as you can go anywhere you want and do anything you want at any time. And the fourth dimension is being able to go anywhere you want by folding space to any time you want, because time doesn't affect the fourth dimension. Well, theoretically, as far as I'm aware, doesn't affect the fourth dimension the same way. It's the same as teleportation. Like you can go anywhere you want, wherever you want, which would give you the ability to do whatever you want, whenever and wherever. So I've always liked the idea that, from like a scientific point of view, that when you die, you know, your spirit or your energy, whatever you want to call it, then is in the fourth dimension. You're no longer attached to your body and you can go anywhere you want, whenever you want, because you're now a fourth dimensional being. I've always liked that idea. I feel like it makes a lot more sense, or it makes more sense to me than anything else I've ever heard. And then I, as a super cool guy, I've never really felt very attached to my body. I don't know, just because of the way that my brain processes things. I've never felt super attached. So when I think about, well, there's two things. The first one is, scientifically, it is impossible to turn something into nothing. Like, it's scientifically impossible to the best of my knowledge. And the day that you are able to turn something into nothing is the day that I admit when you die there is nothing, right? So no matter how small you break something down into, there's always something. There's the atom, there's the whatever after, and the whatever after, and the whatever after. You keep trying to break something down, there's always something there. So to me, it doesn't make any sense that the only thing in the universe that can be turned from something into nothing is the consciousness. And the reason that doesn't make sense to me is that my experience of life isn't that I am a consciousness and that is my brain. For me, life feels like I am something and I control the brain to tell the body what to do. You know, I am in here somewhere and I send a signal to the brain telling my hand to move down, and then my body then moves my hand down. That's what life and movement feel like to me, because of the chemistry of my brain, because of how I work. I've always felt that way. It's the reason why when I go to the gym, I can push my body to the point of breaking, because I'm telling my body, just do it, like lift it up again. And I can hear like my muscles are reporting back to my brain. They're screaming. And they're saying, I can't do another one. I can't do another one. They're exhausted. It's painful. And I just send the signal again. I go, move the thing back up. And now move it back down. Because I feel that it's not like that constantly for me. It dips in and out of that, which is really difficult to explain. But that's my experience of it. So the idea that the only thing in the universe that can be reduced to nothing is your consciousness doesn't make sense. And the argument I've heard from people is, well, it's not your brain, it's not your consciousness that's reduced to nothing, it's your brain, and your brain is who you are. And I just don't, maybe it's impossible to physically feel that, but I don't physically feel that. So it's very difficult for me to bring those ideas together, that when the brain goes, the consciousness goes. When my consciousness doesn't feel like it's attached to my brain, I feel like I'm one thing controlling it all. And people go, yeah, that's your brain. But it doesn't feel like that. When I lift my arm, I feel like if I focus, I feel like I am the one lifting my arm. But it doesn't feel like a signal being sent from my brain. It feels like a signal that I'm sending to my brain to send to the muscle to lift the arm. It's so difficult to fully explain. You know, a Carl Sagan tip as well. Yes, another streamer I follow has been watching Cosmos. Wait, could we watch the entirety of Carl Sagan Cosmos on stream? That would actually be so much fun. That's a really good idea. Understand that I also feel like I'm watching someone who's had a few talks of a magic dragon. That's assuming consciousness is a thing that exists separately of its constituent parts. It's more like a computer. A working computer is something, a broken computer is nothing. Yeah. That's the argument that I've often heard. That is the argument that I have often heard, that you're assuming that I'm going to read that again. You're assuming the consciousness is a thing that exists separately of its constituent parts, which is to say, you're assuming that consciousness is separate from the brain, when in fact, much more like a computer, which has the motherboard, the CPU and that, when the CPU dies, the computer is dead. It can no longer perform those calculations. But my argument is, here's the part that I try to argue. A computer is nothing without electricity. My consciousness feels more like electricity to me. Does that make sense? That's really difficult to convey. So I'm going to say it again one more time to make sure that the feeling of what because it's difficult for me to put that into words, but I feel like I can maybe convey the feeling. So in the same way that yes, a CPU can die and a motherboard can die, the computer is absolutely nothing without the electricity coursing through it. And I feel in the same way that yes, my body is nothing without the heart or the brain, but the thing that matters most in that calculation is the electricity. If that makes sense. I still haven't, I think about this a lot. There's many nights where I lie awake just thinking about this, or I go for a drive and I'm just thinking about this the entire way, trying to really understand what it is and what the answer is. And like the thing that I get stuck on quite often is, are you maybe saying these things to yourself because the idea of nothingness is so utterly terrifying that you have to find an alternative answer? And that's something I get stuck on a lot as well, you know? That's an easy thing to get stuck on, you know? Are you making up excuses in order to deal? And I hope I'm not. That's the best answer I can always come up with. I hope I'm not. I hope that I continue to really think about it and figure it out. And ultimately, whether or not I figure out what I believe is true or not, it doesn't really matter because the ending is inevitable, right? But I do still enjoy contemplating it. I find it really fun to try and challenge myself when thinking about life and death and the concept of nothingness and the meaning, the possible meaninglessness of life or the meaning of life. And, I have my own like really long, wacky theories, which, I think that there are multiple stages of being alive. And I kind of like the idea of a little bit of Hinduism, a little bit of Christianity, a little bit of everything. I think everyone's got a little piece of it. And I think that most likely you start life as maybe like a fucking blade of grass or a tree or something, and the purpose of your life is to experience being alive. And then you'd pass on to the second phase, which is maybe, experiencing life as an animal. And in that you experience, I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. I had this all worked out, but the point to the second part of life is to experience, what's the word for instinct? Is to experience instinct. And I think that the third part to life, which is the one we're in, you can look at it like as dimensions or whatever. The third part is experiencing life as a human. And the point of it, I think, possibly, I keep coming to the conclusion that the point of life is probably pain. And when you've experienced an adequate amount of pain, you're able to pass on. It's kind of what I always come to mentally. But I feel like it's such a downer way of looking at life as a human, Another idea I kind of came to and about life as we are right now, I kept coming to was we're supposed to experience the meaning, like the value of life. Because if we were to, let's say that the fourth dimension is what's next in this crazy scenario. The fourth dimension would be being able to go anywhere you want, whenever you want, whenever you want. And surely with that amount of power, you would need to have some kind of value for life. So I kind of like the idea that you experience, like in much in the same way that I think it's Hinduism, you're reborn as a cockroach, as a cat, as a dog, as a tiger, as a human, and then you start again. Somewhat similar is my belief, not my belief, but because I don't believe this, is that I'm trying to figure things out. And I'm trying to find things that make sense to me, So it's somewhat my understanding, I should say, of life, that there will be another stage to it and a new lesson to learn. And you just keep going on until ultimately, I really like the idea. This is my really crazy bit, right? The crazy part for me is that at the end, when you've experienced life in all the different ways you can, in all the different methods of dimensions and living and experiencing, you're asked one single question, right? And the single question is, do you think that life should continue, or do you think that life should end? And one day, when more beings have experienced life and said they think it should end than should continue, that's when the universe starts to contract. I really like that idea. And that's the point. And then you go, what if the universe contracts and everyone then ceases to exist? Then what happens? And that's the fun part. Then you go, well, I don't know. Then you go, maybe we restart. Maybe we tweak a few variables and start again. I also really like, dude, this belief of mine got shattered recently, and but we're gonna continue the video in a minute. This belief of mine got absolutely shattered recently. I used to believe that the reason that the universe exists and the reason the Big Bang happened, right? And this is, again, I'm not saying anything that I'm saying is smart or right. I'm just telling you the crazy things that I've worked out in my head, and I go, oh, that sounds super plausible. And then someone will just say something like, well, what about this? And I go, oh, I guess what I was thinking was stupid. I'm totally open and happy to admit what I think is stupid. But I used to think that the universe exists because it's inevitable. Because I looked at it like math. So if the beginning of the universe is you've got nothing and nothing and they cancel each other out. You've got nothing, 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 they cancel each other out, nothing exists. You've got something and something, there's too much, implodes in on itself. And then you've got something and nothing. Well, then it exists and doesn't exist at the same time, it cancels itself out. So how does the universe exist? Well, I think it is something, something, and nothing. So, how do you explain that? How do I make that make sense? I think the universe exists because we have something, something, and nothing. Meaning, the universe has life and is expanding, but has black holes. I think black holes are proof of there being the existence, or I used to think black holes were proof of the existence of nothing. And that the expansion of the universe was the proof of something. And that the third point was life, which exists and then doesn't exist, is proof of the second part of something. So you've got something, something, and nothing, right? But then, in the last year, or in the last few months, scientists observed a black hole spewing matter, I think it was 5 years after it had swallowed matter, which had never been observed before and wasn't supposed to theoretically be possible. Which shattered the idea that the universe started something, something, and nothing, and the proof of nothing is black holes, is the proof of nothing existing at the same time as something, which means that the whole idea is moot. But I really liked that idea for a long time. It made sense to me, you know? I really liked that idea. It sounds dumb, but I liked it and it made sense to me at the time. You feel more like a cloud than a hard drive? I feel more like electricity than a hard drive, I would say. I honestly think in our lifetimes we'll be able to put a little bit of our consciousness into the cloud. That brings me comfort. That doesn't bring me comfort. The idea of being able to live forever means that my brain has to continue to live forever. If my brain doesn't, transferring myself, copying myself, that's not real eternal life, you know? I was thinking that I haven't seen you stream in ages, but I guess you're here now. Hey Chris, yes. I'm planning on going live on Twitch for like 3 minutes with a pre-rendered video, just to let everyone know who doesn't know that I am live now on YouTube. I just haven't gotten around to recording that and then going live to post that video. But I'm going to. Same for like Twitter and stuff. I think some people get comfort in leaving a legacy. Yeah, absolutely. Since my dad passed earlier this year, this shit is keeping me keeping me busy so much. Dude, the passing of any loved one gets your brain whirring for sure. The thing that always brings me comfort in the idea of people that I know passing, and I've been very lucky in this, that I've only known one person and barely knew them who has passed. Many people that I wouldn't mind, you know, getting the news that they passed. Like, oh no, I'm being a dick. No, the thing that brings me comfort, I have to try and make myself laugh because it's such a downer subject. The thing that brings me comfort in the idea of people passing is either you are somewhere better, or You are absolutely nowhere. And either one, there's no in between. Either one of those scenarios, you either are in a better place or don't know that you're not anywhere. So how can I really be sad? If that makes sense, you know? That's what always, brings me comfort in the idea of, in the idea of me passing away, Like, not that I ever will. I'm living forever. Mark my words. Play this back at my funeral, thank you. The idea that either I'll be somewhere better or I won't know that I'm not here. Either way is that's a good result either way, right? That's a win-win in my opinion. Not knowing that you don't exist, that's a win. Being somewhere better, that's a win, My mind is broke. So now it's something, something, and something. Yeah. A black hole spewing out matter is something, something, something. That breaks my model, and I need to build a new one. I've not gotten around to it. Let's go back to Carl Sagan. Dude, I'm putting this all up as a video, and I can't wait for like a couple years down the line to check the comments on this. And there's just people going, this dude is so dumb. This dude don't know nothing. This dude's so dumb. You know what's dumb? Taking the time to comment that you think someone's intelligence is inferior to yours in order to prop yourself up or bring someone else down. Bitch!
Now, to approach that, let's consider a cube. We can imagine a cube in the following way. You take a line segment and move it at right angles to itself in equal length.
Yeah, prepare yourself for this. Fourth dimension, prepare yourself.
Makes a square. Move that square in equal length at right angles to itself, and you have a cube. Now, this cube, we understand, casts a shadow. And that shadow we recognize. It's, ordinarily drawn in third grade classrooms as two squares with their vertices connected. Now, if we look at the shadow of a three-dimensional object in two dimensions, we see that, in this case, not all the lines appear equal. Not all the angles are right angles. The three-dimensional object has not been perfectly represented in its projection in two dimensions, but that's part of the cost of losing a dimension in the projection. Now, let's take
the cost. Oh, that goes back to my ghost theory. If the cost, oh my god, wait, listen to this, listen to me just for a second. If the cost, look at this, dude, I'm onto something. If the cost of representing a 3D, if the cost of my brain is shattering before my eyes. If the cost of representing a three-dimensional object in a two-dimensional plane means
losing a dimension in the projection.
Hold on, wait, say that a full bit again for me.
But that's part of the cost of losing a dimension in the projection.
One more time.
The shadow of a three-dimensional object in two dimensions, we see that, in this case, not all the lines appear equal. Not all the angles are right angles. The three-dimensional object has not been perfectly represented in its projection in two dimensions, but that's part of the cost of losing a dimension in the projection.
Right, so if that's the cost, if everything doesn't line up properly, if some lines aren't as equal to others as others, right, hear me out. What if that's why ghosts appear like see-through kind of? Or like shimmery, or you can't fully make them out, or seems like they can phase through walls. Like, not that part, not so much. But what if the reason that they seem so hollow is that the cost of projecting a fourth dimensional thing in the third dimension does the same thing that projecting a three-dimensional thing on a 2D dimension? What if that's why they look see-through? Or look pale and ghostly, or all the shit that you hear. Because that's the cost of representing that upper dimension on the current. Dude, I am proving the existence of ghosts. See, now I really want to watch the fifth dimensional, because Carl Sagan's got a fifth dimensional beings video, and I'm really, really interested to know whether or not any of the stuff that I've said about ghosts, because I want to be clear, I don't really believe in ghosts. See, now, God damn it, I got to defend myself here. I don't believe in ghosts, right? However, I have had one weird experience, right? A really, really, really weird experience, okay? So, I'm gonna tell you the short version. Many, many years ago in a galaxy far away. No, long story short on my story, long time ago, I was sitting at my computer playing games. And to the right of me is a door that leads to the rest of the house. And to the left of me is a window that looks outside. And as I'm sitting at my desk playing Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne, amazing game. As I'm sitting there playing, I see a woman so tall that I can't see her head, in a white dress, top to the floor, walk by my door. Now, the thing that really freaks me out is not only do I see her reflection in the window, but I see her out the right side of my eyes as well. Now, the door frame was, it must have been like a 6'8" frame, round about there. No one in my house owned a white dress. And at this point in time, I lived up in the mountains in a house that had been built there that was round about 4 kilometers from the nearest town, like a 10-minute drive, right? So there was no one around, and I saw the reflection of the person that was in the house. So there was no one else nearby. Like, we didn't even have electricity. We had a generator that was ran at night in order for me to play Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne on my computer, okay? I would go out, turn a generator on. There was no one else there. No one. I don't say a word to anyone. No one. 2 to 3 days later, one of my family members comes over to me and says, I'm scared because I keep seeing things. And I say, what? What things? My family member says, I keep seeing a tall woman in a white dress walking by. This is I had never mentioned a word of this to anyone. No one. Not a word. Not a peep. I know for a fact. Described the exact thing that I had been seeing. So I don't believe in ghosts. I don't know what that was. That is the only experience I've ever had where I had someone else tell me they'd seen the thing that I had seen. And that freaked me out for a while. For a while, dude. So absolutely bizarre. Fourth dimensional ghosts, I'm telling you. It was a fourth dimensional ghost, that's what it was. And you don't believe after such an experience? No, because I think there's probably some kind of scientific, like, I would sooner believe that it was a fourth dimensional being that somehow was, I was able to see them in our world before I would believe it's a ghost. However, you could argue in that ridiculous scenario that a fourth dimensional being is a ghost. But no, I don't believe in ghosts. I think that was just some kind of, I would more likely believe that maybe I was really tired and I was kind of nodding off while playing the game, and I just saw something walk by, maybe a family member, and my brain made something up, and I find it difficult to believe in any of that kind of stuff. You're not dumb, Blue. I think it's pretty cool that you try to put subjects like this in your streams. I mean, it's coming in naturally, huh? Video title: I approve the existence in ghosts, but don't believe in them. You saw the Resident Evil lady? I did. I still not played that Resident Evil game. Right, let's continue.
Now, let's take this three-dimensional cube and project it, carry it through a fourth physical dimension. Not that way, not that way, not that way, but at right angles to those three directions. I can't show you what direction that is, but imagine that there is a fourth physical dimension. In that case, we would generate a four-dimensional hypercube, which is also called a tesseract. I cannot show you a tesseract because I and you are trapped in three dimensions. But what I can show you is the shadow in three dimensions of a four-dimensional hypercube or tesseract. This is it. And you can see it's two nested cubes, all the vertices connected by lines. And now the real tesseract in four dimensions would have all the lines of equal length and all the angles right angles. That's not what we see here, but that's the penalty of projection. So you see, while we cannot...
I don't know what it is about Carl Sagan, but look at his face and his voice and the understanding in what he says. Like, there's something about the way he's speaking here. Like, it's not frustration. You know what it kind of seems like? It kind of seems just like a little bit of upset that he'll never be able to experience it. Like, just this.
Of projection.
There's a little bit of sadness in it. And, like, I wish that he was still alive and I could show him the fourth dimension for real. Just to, it seems like such a lovely guy.
So,
seemed like.
See, while we cannot imagine the world of four dimensions, we can certainly think about it perfectly well. Now, imagine a universe just like Flatland, truly...
No! Where's the rest of the video? Oh my god, don't do this to me. No. We need more. Carl Sagan for 7 minutes. No. Oh no. Oh no. I wonder if the fifth dimensional one is that continued.
Now, to approach that, let's consider a cube.
How could they end it here, dude?
You can certainly think.
Oh no! Well, if you were watching this on YouTube's in the future, guess you just have to subscribe in order to find out whether or not I find the next part of the video. Like and subscribe.